So let's look at other tools that we have under the measurement tools. So I'll proceed back to tools menu, and then we have the Polylenth. Now the Polylenth is very similar to length, but with the Polylenth you can create more than one segment. Remember, with the length you only create a segment defined by 2 points, but for the Polylenth you can define more than 1 point. So for example, let's say I want to measure the distance from this point to this point, and in this case I want to follow this particular wall. So I can click at this point, and then once again click at this point. So that is the first segment. Proceed like this. So I click again until I finish up. So I'm going to click at the final point here, and once you are done with placing this particular Polylenth, you can just press enter, and then the various segments are going to be added. Now it seems that there's some entanglement here, because you can see that how the information have been arranged is like there's a problem. So I'm just going to press escape and select this particular Polylenth. So again, we note that the settings here are very similar. You can change the color of the line. Remember, we have the line that we actually defined. So you can change the color, you can change the line opacity, the type of the line weight, the start. You can define the start from this point. So probably if you want to have this kind of a start, you can do so. You can also add an end like that. Now the others, for example, the show segment values. So we have the values by each of these particular segment. So for example, if I click at this point, the segment values, which of course is the values from the points we clicked, are going, if you click at this point, they are going to be hidden, but if I click, they are going to be shown. And then what you see here is the total. So that is it, and that's what we mean. Again, under the unit, just like with the length, we can decide to as well produce an area with by using this particular Polylenth, and this area will be possible if you have something under the depth, which of course is the height. Probably if you have something like 2, and then you choose the square meter here, that is the units for the area, and then the depth, you choose the meters, and then you have the rise stroke drop. Again, you add as a meter there. So that is it. Now it is not a must you click at this point to define what should be shown. Yeah, for example, you can see that the wall area is 9, which of course is 4.9 by 2. This particular information, even if I do not check them to be shown here, you can fetch them from this particular summary. For example, you can see that we have a section of the wall area, and also the length. Okay, we have the length is this, and then you have the section for the wall area and the depth. So you can, it is important to note that you can fetch them from this particular markup list. So that is it. And okay, the others, the totals here, we came across the font. You can do the settings for the font, the totals here. If I click at this particular point, we can be able to read this particular information. Now again, with the properties, we have the same settings. You can choose the subject, you can add a label, and then here you can choose the color, and this of course is the same. You can decide to show segment values by clicking at this particular point. So it's either you use this one or use this one. Both of them have the same thing. And then here I think there are more options to show them to align to the segment or align horizontally. So we have those particular options. Decide to show the captions. Now for the length, this particular length that we added in the first instance, these ones, they do not have the, okay, they only have one segment. That's why we don't have this option. Again, the show caption here, you can decide to show captions or not, and then you can edit what should be shown under the caption. Now for here, for this one, we don't want to show the segment values, so I uncheck that, and what we see is the total value. You can change the font size probably to 7, and you can do the other settings. Again, you can set it as default. So if you set it as default, any other length that you add using the Polylenth is going to be added using the properties that have been set as default. So that is it. If I proceed and click to start adding another Polylenth, let me add it from that point, and then I press enter. You note that the segment values are not going to be shown, contrary to what we had with the first one that we added, where the segments were showing. So you can see that you can proceed with set as default, so that the predefined settings that you've done are still retained even after adding a particular measurement tool. So that is the length. I'll proceed back to the tools. We have others, the area, which of course is very important. If I click the area, you can add an area. Let's probably say I want to define the area of this particular room. Here, even before placing the area, you can decide to do the settings, the line, the others, the fill. Now, this one has the option to add a fill, that is the fill color. Then you have the units. So probably before even you add it, or before even you do anything else, you would work on the unit. So here we want the final area to be shown as a square meter. We want the volume. Remember, yes, we are going to produce the area, and that is the main thing. You can as well proceed and create, add or have a volume attached to the area if you provide a depth, and if you as well provide a slope, that of course will be put into place. Now, if you are, for example, doing the area of a pitched roof, you can decide to add a slope of that particular roof. So that is where you can use the slope. So here we have the area and then the volume that can be attached. If need be, you can do so. Now, in this case, I don't want the volume to be attached. Therefore, I'll just proceed with the depth. Now, with area, there are two options of adding the area. I can click at this point and define an enclosed enclosure. So remember, you have to create something that is enclosed like this. You have to create a loop. So we have this particular area defined. So that is the first one. I press Ctrl plus Z to undo that. Now, if it is rectangular like this, you can make it a little bit faster. So I can snap at that point and then click and hold. So if you click and hold, that is the left click and hold, and then I move my cursor like that, it is going to create a rectangle area, or you're going to create something that is rectangular like that. Of course, you have to be careful like that, so that the area that you want to define is well covered. You can decide to use this particular option, and the one that we had prior, okay, the one that we have here currently, we have added a rectangle. So that of course is possible when you have a rectangle, but assume we have this particular room that looks like this. In this case, you have to proceed and click at these points, because we don't have a rectangular polygon defined in that particular room. So that is it. And you can see now the area here is shown as in square feet. I can proceed add the unit. So first of all, select it and change to square meters. Now we did some settings before we add it, but I think we lost the settings, probably because we clicked before placing the first within the first instance. And here we have the volume. We don't need that, so we don't need to change. So there it is. Now you can decide to have a fill. Sometimes you want to proceed with fill so that the area covered can be shown. Again, with this one, I'll work on the set. I'll work on the under the properties. But of course, if you proceed and change the opacity from this point, well, but for our case, we can change the fill opacity from this end. So the good thing with opacity is that if I have, for example, 20, we can have 20. click at this point. Is it working? Let me see which opacity I'm actually working on. We have the fill opacity. Let's have about 20. Is it working? Now you note that once we have the fill opacity as 20, you note that we can be able to see what is below that. So sometimes it is important that you work with these particular opacities. Let me select it once again and try to change the opacity here. So probably I can proceed with about 30, and I'll click inside this point, or like click at another point. I'm going to change. So make sure that it changes so that you can have the opacity, and of course this will be helpful. So that is the area of this particular room. Again, we can define other measurements, for example, the perimeter. Now the perimeter is very similar to the Polylenth. They are very similar. And then we have the diameter. So if I click at the diameter, for example, we have this particular circle here. Probably want to know the diameter. You just need to click at this particular boundary that defines the circle, and then you can populate the diameter like this. So the diameter there is 1.66. I'll proceed back, and here we can find out the center radius. Again, with this one, I can click at this point and I find the radius like that. So if you want your line to be straight, just hold down your shift. So the radius there is about between 0.84 and 0.83, somewhere there. So it's about 0.83, I think. And then we have the option to find the radius by 3 points. Again, okay, this one, you find the radius by 3 points. If I click at this point and another point, you can find the radius by 3 points. You see it's about 0.83 there, or 0. Yeah, it's about there. You can decide to, those are the two ways of finding out the radius. So you either find out the radius using the center radius or 3 points. Then you have the angle. You can measure the angle, for example, and this is just for illustration, the angle here. So you just need to click at this point, and you can define the angle by clicking at that point. So that is how you are able to find out the angle. Let's try. If you want the angle here, you click at this point, click at the intersection of the lines, and then click at the third point so that you can define that particular angle. So that's a 3-click operation where you click at one of the lines, you click at the intersection of the lines that make up the angle, and then you click at within the segment of the second line to get the angle. So that is it. We've got others where you, for example, the option to add a volume. So under the measure, we have the volume. So we can measure the volume. For example, let's say we want to know the volume at this point. So I can first of all click to add or to cross the boundary like this, of course, and I can click at that point. So I'm just going to place escape and then select this particular area, and then under the units, you can click at units, and then you can decide to change the depth. So the depth here, we can say it's about okay, we can have meters and say have 2 meters. So that is the depth, and then you choose the units for the volume, and the volume can as well populate the area. In this case, you choose the unit for the area. So that is it. That is the volume. Quite simple. So the area that have been populated using this particular volume, we can find it under this point. So that is the area. Under the area column, that is where we have the area that comes up or that is populated by using this particular volume measurement. And then of course there are others, for example, the polygon cutout. So if I click on that, Now assume that we've added this particular area. This is the area, and probably we want to remove a certain area within this particular main area. Let's say this is a floor slab, and then there's a staircase. So you'd want to remove the area of that particular staircase. In that case, you create what we call a polygon cutout. For example, you can have a polygon cutout of that particular bed. You can see that the area have reduced. You can do so to the volume measurements, because it's also part of area measurement. You can remove some part of this particular volume like that. And then the methods of placement of the polygon, you can have rectangular placement where you click and hold and define the diagonal of that particular rectangle, and it will be defined like that. And or else you can just proceed and create a polygon by clicking at different points. So that is the polygon cutout, and it's also useful sometimes if you want to remove a certain area, or you want to remove a certain region within the area. You want to remove it from the area measurement. You can use the polygon cutout. And then you have the count, so you can decide to count things. For example, I can click to count this particular WCs and also the sinks. If I press escape and select one of them, you can see they have 5, so that is the count. And then we have the count column within the markup list, and we can see we have counted 5. Again, very useful. And then with this count and with any other measurement tools, there is the settings where you can change the color of the ticks, choose the type of the tick that you want to have to represent the count, the scale, and this of course is the size. You can change the size of these particular ticks, or else any of these. You can decide to have the captions. Probably most of the time it will be turned off. You don't want to show the captions. And of course you can set as default to save the settings that you've done. So other settings here, for example, the units, you can decide to use the counts to define the area, the volume, the depth, the width, the height. So you add them from these points. So if you want to say, for example, you'd be concerned with the height of this particular WC, you would add the height there, the width as well. So, and this information can be populated under the markup list, and you can create a summary out of that for purposes of analyzing. So that is it, and that is what we have under this particular measurement tools. You note that any measurement tool that we add is going to be populated under the markup list, which of course is very important. I can decide to select this particular tools within the markup list. So I can click, for example, to select this one. Again, if you click to select, at this point, it is also selected within the PDF drawing. It is important that to note that once you have added a particular tool, you can change its position, or you can change, you can do some modifications. For example, if I select this particular volume, you can see that I can click at these particular grips and change the position of this line. So note that we can modify them, and it is important that you note that. Again, if you have a curve, you can create a curve. Yeah, you can add control point. Let's say, for example, there was a curve here. You can change this line to create a curve, and you do that by adding control points. Okay, we can add control points like that. You can convert to curve. Currently that option is not there, but you can convert to arc or the curve. Now let's click at add point. We can add a control point there. That is the point that we've added, and this creates a break or creates another segment. Yeah, and if I right click, I can decide to convert this to curve. Click at this point, you can note that there's a control point that defines a curve. Now, let me repeat that again so that it can be clear. If I want to change this particular line to be a curve, I can select this particular measurement area, and then right click and click on add control point. So a control point is going to be added. It's like a new segment. Of course, you can move it to change it like that, but it can also be used to add a curve. In that case, I need to right click. At least make sure that once you are right clicking, you have your pointer showing that kind of a symbol. That is the selection mode. Right click and click on okay. For you to be able to create a curve, you need to be at this point. You need to right click at is it possible? Yeah, you need to click at this particular control point. So I need to click right click there and then click on convert to curve. Now in this case, it is going to produce another control point, so we can use it to convert to curve like that. I hope that is clear. Yeah, so let's repeat again. Let's say, for example, I want to convert this particular line to curve. I'll just right click and click on convert to curve. It's possible to convert to curve like that. So those are the options that we have. You can as well do so to this one. So I can click to select it and then proceed to the boundaries here. Right click. Sometimes you find that we don't have convert to curve active, so try again. Sometimes it's not showing, so let me right click and probably add control point and then proceed to this control point. Right click, control, convert to curve, not showing. Anyway, that is how we can add a point, a control point, and have add to curve. For example, you can see that currently it is showing, but it was not showing there before. So you can try to find out or do something until you're able to convert it to a curve. So this one, we don't have that option of adding a control point. And also this one, polygon, we can, okay, for the poly length, we can convert to curve like this. So if you have a curved geometry, you can use this particular option to change or to convert to curve, which of course could be efficient.